Hi everyone, my name is Otto de Roo. I'm a trainer and auditor at EPI. Today I'm going to give you an overview of the content of the Certified Data Center Migration Specialist course in order to give you a good impression on what to expect from this training. I hope you will enjoy this preview. CDMS is a course designed to expose participants to a step-by-step methodology which will enable them to reduce the risk involved when undertaking a data center migration. The course will address a systematic approach ensuring a successful lift and shift of an operating data center to a new location. The CDMS training is intended for everyone having to deal with data center migration projects and/or data center strategies. Think about project managers, data center managers, operations floor or facility managers, IT managers, network and system engineers, data center sales, data center consultants, logistic managers, etc. CDMS is a two-day training where we will, during the first day, start off with the data center strategy after the course introduction. We will address project management, risk management, migration strategies, and the legal aspects related to a data center migration project. Also, high-level discovery and planning will be discussed on this day, and the last module of the first day will address the design of the target data center. In this course, the source data center is referring to the location where we are migrating from, and the target data center is the location where we are migrating to. On the second day, we will start off with detailed discovery and planning, followed by specific safety and security considerations related to a data center migration project. The actual move will be covered in the implementation module, and we will conclude with the end of project. In order to become certified, you will need to do an exam after this training. The CDMS exam is a closed book exam with 40 multiple choice questions. You will have 1 hour to complete the exam, and the passing mark of the exam is 68%. So you will need 27 correct answers out of 40 questions. In other words, you can make 13 mistakes and still pass the exam. In the next slides, we will go into the content of the CDMS training. I will show you the highlights of the various modules, and I will present some samples of the actual content of this course. During the sneak peek, I will not elaborate on the content of the slides, as this will be obviously be done during the actual training. However, I hope it will provide you a good insight into what to expect from this training. The first module of CDMS addresses the data center strategy. In this module, we will explain the data center lifecycle and elaborate on the various reasons why we need to migrate a data center. We will also indicate alternatives for a data center migration, such as consolidation of IT systems, server virtualization, and outsourcing options like co-location and cloud computing. Upgrading the current data center will also be discussed, including the pros and cons compared to a data center migration project. And of course, we need to get an answer on the key question. Do we really need to migrate our data center? There are many reasons to start a data center migration project. One of the most common reasons is that the data center runs out of capacity. Specifically, the lack of required cooling density per rack is very often a trigger to start a data center migration. Other reasons could be consolidation of multiple regional data centers in order to improve efficiency and scalability, but also changes to the company's structure or business scope could trigger a new data center strategy. And of course, there are many more reasons to migrate the data center, like new regulatory requirements, obsolete data center facilities, or legacy ICT infrastructure. As mentioned earlier, also outsourcing the data center will be covered in this chapter. We will go into co-location options as an alternative for managing your own data center facilities. Also, the various options for cloud computing are explained in this course. Since data center migration is managed as a project, Module 2 will focus on project management. We will point out in this module what project management is and what common methods are used. We will go into various steps in the project management process and will address various project activities like creating the scope statement, statement of work, the work breakdown structure, etc. Also, time allocation as well as cost estimation methods will be covered by this module. And last but not least, we will also point out the importance of project communication. In a number of slides, we will address the various roles that you can find in a project organization. This slide gives you examples for the project sponsor and the steering committee or project board. One of the results of a data center migration planning is a set of detailed runbooks. These are the detailed step-by-step work instructions or scripts that will be leading in the execution of the actual move. These runbooks or migration scripts will provide detailed instructions in 15-minute intervals for the people carrying out the actual migration. In the training, we will also address various cost estimating methods, and we will also give some practical guidance on typical cost items related to a data center migration project. As a data center migration project involves some level of risks, attention in this course is also paid to risk management. We will cover various risk management methodologies in the module, risk identification and different risk assessment methods will be given, like there are the qualitative, semi-quantitative and the quantitative approach. Also, risk evaluation as well as risk treatment will be addressed. Obviously, there will be also some examples given for typical risks that you might encounter when running a data center migration project. As mentioned earlier, we will go into a number of risk assessment methodologies where we will give guidance on how and when to use these assessment methods. We will also go into the various options for risk treatment, where we will give some examples to explain those options and when to use them. In Module 4, we will go into data center migration strategies. Various migration strategies will be explained, including their advantages and disadvantages. We will go into heterogeneous migration, homogeneous migration, and physical migration. Also, IT transformation as part of the migration project will be discussed. This slide shows you a physical migration strategy while making use of a disaster recovery site. We will go into IT transformation and their impact on the project. We will cover the pros and cons of IT transformation before, during, and after the actual move of our data center. We will also discuss the different ways in which you can migrate data. This slide shows you some considerations when doing a physical transfer of data. We also have to take into account the legal aspects of a migration. This is why this is covered in Module 6. We will discuss the regulatory requirements, contractual considerations, and the legal aspects when decommissioning your data center and its equipment. One of the contractual considerations is updating all your contracts with the new address. We need to check the vendor's response times for the new location. We also need to update our operational level agreements or service level agreements with the users or customers of your data center. And of course, proper communication of the changed address and scheduled time of migration is a major requirement. Some of the legal aspects when the decommissioning equipment are discussed on this slide. Module 6 is about high-level discovery and planning. In this module, we will go into high-level discovery and planning. One of these aspects is the business service review, a way to define and agree with management on the most appropriate and cost-effective service level objectives. The business service review will cover both availability and recoverability. We will also elaborate on the requirements for designing the target IT architecture. In this module, we will also address the required information for high-level data center migration planning. Here are some of the questions that need to be answered at the business service review. The answers will be used to design the target IT and network architecture, as well as the target data center facility. The outcome of the business service review will also give us guidance to the timing of the move and the business constraints during the actual migration. The business might even need to accept a reduced service level during the actual move. When designing the target application and infrastructure, we need to know the agreed service level objectives. Also, the status of each application and its importance to the business are input to assigned priorities and to find out whether all applications actually need to be migrated. We also need to know what hardware and software requires a technology refresh. An important aspect to consider when defining the various migration waves are the dependencies between the various applications and systems. Also, the required storage capacity in the target data center can play an important role in the migration planning. This slide shows you a list of information that must be collected to facilitate high-level planning of your data center migration project. In this course, we will also go into the requirements for the target data center or maybe the target co-location facility. We will discuss the required availability and redundancy of the target data center. In this module, we will also address the requirements for space, power, cooling, and network connectivity, as well as the physical security requirements and the energy efficiency of the data center. This slide shows you some of the key considerations when designing the cooling capacity and density for the target data center. We will also cover the growing importance of data center efficiency and the need for environmental sustainability when designing a new data center or maybe selecting a co-location provider. Please do not forget the lessons learned from the original or source data center. Think about scalability, energy efficiency, improved monitoring and management systems, and obviously you might need to comply to any new regulations. Module 8 is about detailed discovery and planning. Here we are going to discuss the importance of discovery and the usefulness of automated discovery tools. Asset management as well as network and system dependencies will be covered in this module because they are an important aspect for the migration planning. We will also go into detail on how to define migration waves. Migration waves, they need to be defined when you cannot move all the applications and systems in one single go. The importance of the asset database is explained in this slide. Yeah? Without a complete and up-to-date database, the data center migration project is actually doomed to fail. As mentioned earlier, we are also going into the network and system dependencies, both upward and downward. And this slide shows you some best practices how to deal with those dependencies. Most data center migration projects will be executed in various migration waves. This slide will give you guidance on how to define and size those migration waves. Yeah, based on the management information coming from the discovery database, we can define those migration waves taking into account migration patterns, architectural patterns, the number and complexity of systems that we can migrate in a single wave. And when defining those migration waves, of course, we need to take the project constraints like budget and time into account. Obviously, safety is an important aspect of a data center migration project. In Module 9, we are covering the safety aspects such as the role of the safety manager and the technical safety review of the target data center. We're also going into the specific safety aspects relevant to a data center migration, such as lifting of heavy equipment and fire safety during the actual move. This slide shows you some of the physical safety measures that needs to be reviewed before moving into the target data center. Best safety practices for data center migration will be also part of this training. Here, for example, the lifting of heavy equipment. All participants in the data center migration project, whether permanent or temporary, should be concerned with safety and should work as safely as possible. The stress and sometimes a tight timetable during a migration project cannot be an excuse for not working safely or trying to bypass safety rules, as this can cause injury to you or someone else. Next to safety, also security aspects related to a data center migration project will be addressed in this training. In this module, we will go into the balance between access and security during the migration. We will address the access control process, managing security during migration, key management, and continuous improvement of the security measures and procedures during the course of the migration project. For all people involved in the migration project, physical access controls should be based on pre-authorization. This slide shows you the requirements for pre-authorization in order to get physical access to the data center. We will have some slides with possible changes in the security procedures to facilitate the migration project or to make the project more secure. Some of these changes are listed on this slide. Think about giving the project manager the authorization to approve access requests, switching off door open alarms during the actual move, additional security measures required for temporarily stored ICT equipment, and deploying additional security guards in areas with heavy traffic, like locations where a lot of people are walking in and out. A large module will cover the actual move of data and equipment to the target data center. In this module, we will go into the importance of rehearsal and route investigation. We will address resource allocation, which includes the logistics team. Based on best practices, we will discuss the practical implementation of the move. Think about packing of equipment and racks, transporting and installing equipment in the target data center. Also, post-migration support for the end user will be covered in this module 11. Trial runs and rehearsals are required to uncover unexpected physical obstacles. Those rehearsals will also help you to refine the timing in the runbooks. In this module, we will also show you the best way to transport equipment and equipment racks. We will also give advice on what preparations are required when you need to use lifts or elevators, either in the source or the target data center. This slide gives you some practical advice on installing power cables in the equipment racks. Multiple slides will cover the best practices for system and application testing. A data center migration project is usually seen as a technical endeavor, but do not forget the importance of good communication with all project stakeholders. Especially during implementation, communication is of great importance. Not only communication with management, but also communication with the end users and members of the project team. Module 12 is the last module of the data center migration course, and it is about closing the project. Project closure is often ignored at the end of an engagement. You need to follow a due process to close out the project. In this module, we are giving guidance on proper project closure, which includes best practices on confirmation on the objectives being met, lessons learned, phase completion, and other criteria for a proper project closure. We will also list some of the common problems that had an effect on the success of real-life migration projects. Establish regular check-ins to gather lessons learned throughout the course of the project rather than wait until the end of the project. Sometimes important lessons learned are uncovered early in the project and then not represented at the closeout because they happened so early and they were already forgotten. Also, certain team members may disengage from the project when their portion of the launch is complete, so the team loses real-time feedback. It is also too easy to focus on what went wrong or always be looking for an improvement. So you will also need to include the positive lessons like the achievements and best practices that made the project successful. We will also discuss the most common problems that you might encounter with a data center migration. This slide is part of the list of problems that has been drawn up based on experience with real migration projects. This ends the sneak peek of our CDMS training. Further details on this training can be found on our company's website using the URL given on this slide: www.epi-ap.com/CDMS. I hope you have all enjoyed this sneak peek of the Certified Data Center Migration Specialist course. I would like to thank you for your attention, and we are looking forward to see you at the CDMS training. To contact us, you can use the email address as mentioned on the slide, sales@epi-ap.com. You can also follow us on the social media listed here. Again, thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that you have enjoyed this sneak peek.